Welcome to the 2018 Overlook Film Festival. My name is Landon Zakheim. I am the co-director of the festival. Without further ado, I would love to introduce Blackout creator and also an immersive programmer for 2-Bit Circus, Mr. Josh Randall, to welcome all of the artists with immersive work at the Overlook Film Festival and discuss this panel that is very, very close to our festival's heart. Thank you so much. Take it away, Josh.
Hi everybody, thank you Landon for having us having us perform and having us show our work here. And thank you guys all for showing up. As Landon was saying, my name is Josh Randall. I'm one of the co-creators of Blackout with my partner here, Chris. I'm also the event and programming manager for something called 2-Bit Circus. We're currently based out of LA, but for those of you that don't know, it's an entertainment company, and we're going to be opening a whole network of micro amusement parks all around the world over the next several years. It's essentially going to be 50,000 square feet of VR, escape rooms, immersive theater, full food and beverage, robot bartenders, reimagined arcade games. I kind of like saying it's basically like what you would imagine a super high-end Chuck E. Cheese for adults if it were in the middle of Burning Man. And with that, I hope everybody signs up for some 2-Bit Circus stuff after this, and we'll be talking about it during the panel. So that's a little bit about me. Let's kind of just quickly introduce everybody before we start talking about crazy immersive stuff. So if we could all just kind of go down the line. Darren, let's start with you and just sort of briefly say
Sure.
what you're doing here and who you are.
Hey everyone, my name is Darren Bousman, the co-creator of the Tension Experience and the Lust Experience. Also have a film here, and I'm also a director. Have a film here tonight, St. Agatha, which I hope you guys all come and see at 6:15. We not only do immersive theater, we also do ARGs, which is a kind of real-world exploitation of narratives that you basically interact with the real world to kind of uncover the storyline. We're based in LA, but we're now expanding to a few cities, Las Vegas being the next city that we're moving to. So a little bit about us.
Sweet. Hey guys, thanks for coming. I am John Braver, creator of Delusion. It's a live interactive theater piece in LA, and going to be hitting up a few other cities at some point as well too. I have a VR experience here with my team based off the 2014 play Lies Within. It's called Delusion Lies Within. It's an incredible cinematic VR experience, so I'd love for you guys to check it out. It goes till 7. Some of you have seen it already here. I've seen some of your faces. And Delusion is basically the theater pieces. The audience partakes in a story. It's a dark fantasy adventure. That's kind of our theme, and it's all very heavy story driven. So, and we'll get into that more later. Annie Lesser.
Hi, I'm Annie. I write, produce, and direct immersive theater. My last name's Lesser, but he said that, but I wasn't sure if all of you heard that. I do this show called the ABC Project, which brought me to the festival last year with my show Apartment 8, which we adapted as The Chalet. And I'm doing Infinitely Dinner Society here this year.
Hi everyone, I'm Austin Keeling. I'm part of E3W Productions. We're a small immersive company that's based in Los Angeles. We're here this year with an excerpt from our first show, In Another Room. It's a spooky ghost story, so if you want to check it out, it's happening every night here.
Hi everyone, I'm Kristjan. I am the co-creator of Blackout, as Josh mentioned. I'm a filmmaker and a theater director in New York, and I also teach at NYU, so it's pretty much it.
So with Blackout.
Blackout is an extreme immersive solo experience, so really sort of trying to get at the heart of what sort of real fear can be and how far you can push the limits of the horror experience in a one-on-one setting.
Cool. So Chris and I are going to kind of like split it up. I'll do the 2-Bit stuff. We'll do the Blackout stuff. So thank you everyone for introducing yourself. So obviously immersive theater is having a bit of a moment right now. It's sort of been ramping up, I think, for the last 5 to 7 years, and is definitely hitting a peak. For those of you that are in LA or New York, I think we're just sort of overwhelmed and maybe arguably even oversaturated with the amount of immersive theater pieces that are happening. It seems to be a bit of a, we're having a zeitgeist for that But for those of us that have been doing this for a while, I think it's very apparent that this has been happening for an incredibly long period of time. And there are productions and shows and theater pieces going back an incredibly long period of time that have been doing immersive work. So somehow over the last 5 to 7 years, it's all sort of coalesced into, you know, the label immersive theater. But it's been happening for an incredibly long period of time, as I think most of us can attest to. So one of the first questions that I'd like to ask, and let's start with Chris and then kind of head down. Can you guys all briefly talk about, the first time, whether you were a kid, a teenager, or adult, that you experienced immersive entertainment, and whatever that meant to you at that moment, where you sort of went, oh shit, like this, I could open up the walls of this theater like this thing did or something else did. What was the first time that you kind of realized, or you had an experience that touched that immersive theater nerve before it was actually called immersive theater? Chris, why don't you start?
I think probably the first time for me was I studied in Russia, and I went to a play in St. Petersburg, and it was like you kind of got led like through the dressing rooms and like under and like the backstage area, and they were like, you're going to a black box theater. And sure enough, you sort of kind of ascended into this little black box, and it was this amazing play with this incredible actor about a composer losing his mind. And it, you know, as it's going on the whole time, like you can smell there's something like off, and you had entered into the bowels of the Molly Theater, that big, huge imperial opera house in St. Petersburg. And then sort of as the play was getting to the end, you were like, wait a minute. And then just in this incredible moment, all the walls disappeared. And you realized this tiny audience of 30 people we'd been sitting on the stage of the Molly Theater, and the crazy composer who you'd been watching for the whole time was facing you with a full symphony orchestra conducting the first movement of a symphony, and it was like 18 minutes. And the entire theater was empty and bathed in red light with like this incredible weird cloud of fog, which like I think maybe was why Josh and I are so in love with fog now. But and it was just sort of, and it just, as the curtains disappeared, it sort of dispersed into this insane nebula. And honestly, the thing for me, other than it just being totally kick-ass and incredible as a moment of theater, was it was 30 people alone in like a 4,000 person opera house. That's like arguably one of the most beautiful opera houses in the world. And that rarefied experience was like, that's amazing. Like it actually makes you feel that much more special, and it makes theater really be that much more what theater can do that nobody else that didn't really know what the art form can do, is make you feel so special as an audience member. So I think that really set me on the path for sort of what Blackout's doing and a lot of the work that I've done in theater as a rarefied and sort of touching experience for how few people are seeing one thing.
What year was that?
That was 2001. 2000.
Cool.
Cool. I am very new to the immersive theater scene, and knowing that as like a terminology to describe this type of stuff. I've always been obsessed with Disneyland, and I remember every time I would take friends there, I'd be like, look at the lighting, look at the lighting. Like that was always the thing that I wanted people to notice. But actually the first immersive show I ever saw was His Crimson Queen, Delusion. And I remember that my brother took me to it, and I remember it was just one of those like, oh my God, you know, it included all of the set design and lighting and interesting things that I always loved about like Disneyland, but then storytelling and putting you in it. And I think that was like for me, like kind of like everything came together and it made sense, like this is something I want to explore.
So you're talking to a girl who like started having theme parties when she was 5 and did like a murder mystery dinner for her bat mitzvah. So like but I mean the first time that when I was in college, I was taking this class called Carnival of Souls with Len Jenkins, who's a playwright, and it was all about taking taking different things about life and viewing them as theater, and also taking different theater that is more immersive and just kind of exploring the ways of doing that. So we had to kind of explore the theatricality of radio production and the theatricality of neighborhood. So we each explored a neighborhood and created something that symbolized it. And it culminated eventually in that class and we I went to a steampunk haunted house that was really terrible, but the set design was amazing. But while I was taking that class, he's like, I heard about this thing at the Goethe Institute. It was called Hotel Savoy, and going to that was like really what honed it in on what I wanted to do with immersive theater. It had like a moment in it where I was just talking to someone, and when I was on the train ride back home, I wanted to recreate like that feeling and have that conversation. I wanted to add something back into the conversation but I couldn't do it because it wasn't a real person. You can't go back and talk to them again. And so that was just such an amazing moment, and like since then I've wanted to create moments like that.
Cool.
That's cool. I think as we were going down the line, I was like, what was my first one? And I think it was camp, actually. I grew up in Chicago, and when I was a camp counselor up in Wisconsin, and one time I was known to scare the shit out of everybody at camp. And not just my face, but like just throw on a mask and then hide in a window and stuff like that. So I terrorized this one cabin one time with kids that were like 12, 13, and the counselors didn't know who it was, and this was in the early stages when I wasn't known actually as scaring everybody. So the camp director came up to all the staff. They pulled us all together and they said, okay, we need to set up a search party and find this person who's scaring the hell out of everybody. And I was the leader. And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. So I took the entire camp counseling team, and we all I split them up into different groups and said, okay, you guys go this way. Yeah, you guys, I heard something down in the forest over here. And so it was that was sort of a cool moment of playing puppet master in some way. It was manipulation in the kindest way possible. I don't know, but so we sent people off, and I was leading the team, and I was just watching people's faces, and they were all going on this adventure together. They were having a good time because they knew it wasn't anything horrible, but they just wanted to get to the bottom of it. But it was just that the look on their faces, the adventure they were going on together was sort of one of the many moments. I can go through a whole list of stories, but there were many moments where I was like, oh my God, creating something that people can come together and experience together and bond over, whether it be horror, nothing brings people together more than horror, was quite alluring. So that was kind of the impetus.
I had just moved to Los Angeles. It was late 2001, early 2002. It was actually wrong, it's 2002, and it was Halloween, and I loved haunted houses. I've always loved haunted houses. But I always wanted to find, I don't like the Universal Studio Horror Nights thing. I love going, but to me that's not a true haunted house because you're kind of corralled through and you're kind of pushed through, and I'm more a fan of personalization. And someone told me about this thing called the Cacophony Society, and I didn't know anything about it, and they have a Halloween event. And basically the Cacophony Society is a collective of pranksters, tricksters. It's a collective of artists. And it took place in a bank vault, or a bank, and I knew nothing about it. And what they do is they theme each of their rooms to be a social statement on something. And so I remember one of the first rooms you went into, it was a bunch of guys sitting in front of computers, and they had pirate hats on, and they were pirating software, and they're like, we're pirates! And then like you went into another room, and there was meat, like rotten meat, hanging down from the ceiling with maggots on it, and it was a group of vegetarians eating like carrots. And so this was cool, but then they put you, and I remember this was still today is shocking, it would never pass being PC now, but you actually go into the bank vault, and you get into a bank vault, and there were two guys that were kind of always a little off in our group, and they were not amused by anything, and they were definitely Middle Eastern of some sort. And when you go in the bank vault, and the door's shut, and on it they had Osama bin Laden. Now you have to remember, this is 2002, so September 11th had just happened, year had passed. And you guys remember that Eskimo thing where they would take the lips of that old cartoon, and they'd put like lips, and the Eskimo would say things? Well, they did that with Osama bin Laden, and they were having him say jokes, and then they would like cut to terrorist acts. And these two guys behind us were like, this isn't fucking funny, this is not cool, this is horrible. And so the entire group of 10 people stuck in this vault are now getting very antsy because now these two guys are not amused by it. And then it ended with one of the guys screaming, this is not fucking funny, and he rips open his shirt and had a bomb, and he goes, Ali Akbar! And everyone in the room was like, oh my God. And then there was a huge explosion sound and the whole lights went off. And I remember being so shook and so just like shaken about what the hell, what did I just watch? And I walked away for days, literally just like, I couldn't even articulate with that feeling of being so terrified. And I realized then the power of these moments, the power of moments that can actually shake you out of your reality and make you feel something. And so that one defining instance, I felt more scared, more terrified, more disturbed, more sickened than any movie that I had seen, any other experience. And so I became addicted to trying to find that next thing, that shocked me or shook me, and happened to be Blackout about 7 years later or 6 years later. But that was my first kind of foray into the immersive environments.
Awesome. For me, I am going to go like a little bit farther back, and for anyone that knows me or Blackout, this is probably not a shock, but I have been for a very long time really obsessed with Nine Inch Nails, and I remember being a teenager and the Nine Inch Nails concerts at the time, and also like Madonna, Blonde Ambition, or Girly Show. As weird as that is, like those are the moments that I swear I would be sitting in this environment, and it just was all-encompassing for me. And it was something about that rock concert environment where these artists were like teasing out these narratives through sound and through lights that for some reason just hit me in such a guttural way that I think that was probably my start. So, okay, so that's fun. So moving on, one of the things that, especially because we have so many people here that are obviously interested in immersive theater, you're either actors in it or you're audience members, or you go to it or you follow it online and read the reviews. One of the things that Chris and I find very interesting about Blackout is obviously everybody has an opinion, right? So everybody feels that because you're creating this very personalized show, as we all try to do with our environments, that they have an ability to somehow speak up and say, well, here's what I think about what you've created. Whereas if you go to a regular show, you sit in a seat, the curtain comes down, everybody claps, you go home. Like, you can go talk to the director about, what they put together, but the likelihood that they would really like change something based on your feedback is, not so high. But immersive theater, totally different story. And I think that we, in a weird way, sort of take the brunt of audience feedback in a way that other art forms don't, because I think people feel so attached to the work that we do, and that's the goal, is that we want to attach them to it. But then the other side of the coin is that everyone feels very confident in speaking their mind and saying what they liked and what they didn't like. So let's not go down the line anymore. We'll just sort of pick and choose at this point. Darren, let's start with you, because I know tension and lust have a big component of audience feedback in a way. How do you deal with reactions? What part of the show is created by that? Do you listen? Do you not listen? Is it annoying? Is it useful feedback?
How I deal with it's a copious amount of alcohol. No, with Tension and Lust, for those that don't know, it's a long lead up to our big event, and we'll do main stage events, but there could be a year before that happens. But what we do is we try to interact with the audience, and we create what's called an ARG, or an alternate reality game, which allows you to interact with the characters, the world. And so what I think is different is it's all about how much your buy-in is. So if you go see a movie, you buy a ticket, you sit in the movie for 90 minutes, and that's it. When you go see a traditional play, you spend the 2 hours in the theater, and that's it. With something like with Tension or Lust, you might spend a year. Talking to the characters, interacting in the world, going to these like one-off small kind of pop-up events. So what happens is when you get to the mainstay event, it's yours. You feel an ownership into it because you've invested your time. You've invested months and months and months of your life solving ciphers or driving to go get a clue somewhere. And so it's a hard thing because something like St. Agatha tonight, you'll go and you'll spend 90 minutes. You might like it, you might hate it, but that's it. It's over. With Lust, it's not. With Tension, it's not. And so I think for us, there's a lot of feedback. There is a lot, and we set out to cause chaos as well. And I think that part of what we want to do is upset you and enrage you. And I think a lot of times it's hard to find that line between us succeeding and us failing, because if we enrage you, you're pissed and you're emailing us, you guys suck. And I'm like, exactly, yes, thank you. And it's that hard thing, because a lot of times we get a lot of feedback of people enraged and angry and quitting. And then a week later they'll be like, no, that was awesome, never mind, just continue with it. And it's a hard thing, and that's where the alcoholism comes in, because like, and also the last point on that is we kind of chart out what we want the season to be or the year to be, and we know that we've only given you 25% of the story, and in 30% it's going to pay off, but you're so angry at the 25% because you think that's it, because it's a long lead, it's a year. So it's been a balancing act, and I think at this point I've kind of learned to take things with a grain of salt. You might hate me on a Monday, but love us on a Friday. So,
okay, so you mentioned that it's sort of our job to enrage you and piss you off. I think Chris and I could probably speak to that. Chris, how, in terms of dealing with audience reactions, seeing that the goal is to sort of maybe not piss people off, but what's the blackout answer?
I think that, I mean, listen, everybody has notes, right? And I think that there's this aspect where you have to hear it all because you have to understand what is happening to the people that are going through it. But the difficult thing is like saying no to them, you know what I mean? Even if they're common, you know what I mean? I think similar to what Darren was saying is that there is this sort of love-hate to the thing, but that really it's the meh reaction that is the one that's the most dangerous, because, and I think sometimes like we all in our hearts probably want to be liked to some extent, but what we're trying to do is at all times actually have a reaction that's going to stay, that's going to be powerful, that's going to have resonance to it. And so like the difficult thing is checking that, wanting to be liked, and also but still listening to what everybody has to say so that you're understanding what the landscape of the reactions to the audience members are, but then saying, but I'm going to ignore all those things and continue to do it because this is actually how we cut through what the reactions have been, and how we sort of have a singularity of vision to what the experience is and what the sort of the quote unquote brand is, if that makes sense.
Totally. Austin, you were shaking your head in the middle of that. So obviously you guys, I think, probably skew a little bit more on the theatrical side of this entire table. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, you guys ask very specifically for people not to react, or not react, not respond, right? To not kind of engage the way that we all do in our shows. So how do you guys deal with those kinds of personalized reactions?
Yeah, what I think is interesting, and because we made a film right before we started doing this kind of immersive stuff, and we took it on a film festival circuit and it got a limited release, and we didn't talk to very many people about their reaction to it. There's like a lot of IMDb comments that are like, this sucks, but nothing more, which those are fun, I love reading that, but there wasn't any actual like FaceTime with the people. And so what was nice about immersive theater was that Aaron and Natalie, the co-creators of our team, they sat outside and got to speak to every person who left the house, who left the show, and talk to them right afterwards and get their reactions. And so like you were saying, it was the ones who just walked away were the ones that were like, ugh, that feels weird, you know, because they didn't say anything. But I don't know, I think it's a really exciting form to be working in, because you get to sort of connect with these people, and we've loved having feedback of any kind. I mean, we don't usually change our stuff based on comments, but it's really nice to be able to speak to people about their reactions and kind of get that visceral feeling right away. So.
Cool. So John and Annie, let's just switch gears a tiny bit, and Annie, let's start with you. So we've all been doing this for a decent period of time, right? To that end, I think it is a relatively new form for most of these people, and it's kind of a new form for us too. And with all those comments and feedback that we get, what would you say is the one thing that the general public doesn't entirely understand about immersive work? We get a lot of questions that are very theatrically oriented or very film oriented that would make a lot of sense within that film world or theater world, but it's sort of like, you can't ask me that question. Immersive theater doesn't really fall under that category.
I mean, I feel like this isn't the answer that you're looking for, but
I'm not looking for it.
Okay, but a lot of people just don't seem to get that, like, my characters are characters, and I write a lot of dialogue which sounds like really natural, and you know, it's surprising, like, people assume that almost all of it's improvised, but like 80% of it isn't for a lot of these things. And like I've had people just think that, you know, the emotional reactions and stuff that they're getting from their actors are, you know, very genuine, and sometimes it ends up crossing a line with intimacy. Like, one of my actors had, you know, who like also worked with John, had one of our audience members, like my very first show I did, like kind of stalk her, and it's like it gets to be a little bit weird, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I think going along kind of what Annie was saying, I think people, and I include myself in this because I had a conversation with somebody yesterday about how I'm not a very good person to go to these events, but I know what I have expectations of people that go to them to know how to act when you're there, know what to do. When I go into these things, I feel like a robot sometimes. Like, how interactive should I be? How should I be speaking at this moment? Because we tell people, don't speak unless you're spoken to. There's some sort of like etiquette there that people are getting now with the increase of interactive theater and stuff. People are sort of being trained to act to play their part, in this whole thing. And I think that's what people are slowly getting, is how to act in these events. And I'll wait outside of the play sometimes and talk to people a lot and hear how they respond. And there's always somebody in the group who like becomes a kid again, and those are the people that I want, to really, those are the people that get the most out of the experience, is those who sort of give themselves up to being a kid again. Like, that's what I really want people to do, is just be a child again and go through this horrific experience. No, this adventure, it's not horrific. But I think, that's what people are slowly getting out of it.
So, sticking with John for a second, because you have the VR piece here as well, I think something that we all deal with is the problem of scalability within the immersive theater world. Blackout started in 2009 in New York. We were lucky enough to expand to LA and Chicago, San Francisco, and a whole smattering of other private shows in different places. But at a certain point, I think we sort of reach a cap on how much we can do. I mean, you only go through by yourself. A lot of times it's a very difficult thing for Chris and I to put in the hands of other people. So a lot of times we have to physically be the ones doing it. Otherwise, we don't have a certain element of trust with certain actors just because of the extremity of some of the actions. So I think that we could talk forever about how not scalable this is, but we also tried our hand at a VR thing. We've flirted with movies and TV things, and none of which are happening at the moment. But is immersive theater scalable? And if so, how are you guys moving forward in that?
I think as long as it's like, I'll answer it this way. I write a story. I have a book of stories, and I find a place. It's all site specific. So as long as it's site specific, it's very difficult. The venues, I keep talking about this all the time, is the most difficult thing. Because Delusion's venue are usually that they are their own characters. So just finding a warehouse and building, we don't have the money to do all that. You got to build out an entire mansion inside of a warehouse. It's very difficult, and you can't get a permit for that anyway. But is it scalable? I think so. If I was to personally accept that I'm not going to get a 120-year-old mansion to do these shows, and sort of reduce my expectations about the exact facade of someplace, and maybe go in and spend a little bit more money in the interior. I think it is scalable. But again, for Delusion Live show is a horrible business model. I mean, it's expensive. As I said, it's site specific, so there's a lot of restrictions, the permitting, all that kind of crap we have to deal with. And the VR aspect of it is, I'll speak a little bit about that. It's different because the VR series is a film. It's a digital series, but it's really a movie. You're inside of the movie, you're a ghost in the story. So it makes it easier to scale. Obviously, we can sell it to the whole world. But the theater piece is always going to remain sort of an intimate experience, and I'm very much like you guys. I think I'm definitely a control freak. I think one of my producers over here can attest to that. And I just giving trust to people, like franchise. We've had people saying, "Hey, let's get a Delusion here. We'll get a Delusion here. Can we franchise this?" And I was like, "No." No. Let's just take it easy, one step at a time. Make sure we keep the quality high.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add something about scalability. I designed these. For the first year and a half, this nightclub in LA was open. Designed like these little one-off immersives that would go on for like like a certain number of audience members a night, and then they expanded to a music festival about a year after I stopped working with them, and they asked me to come back on and take those storylines and figure out a way to incorporate them into a music festival type setting where, you know, we had like I don't know, 2,500 people coming through the music festival. So a lot of it, what I did to try and scale things up were like VIPs can make reservations for one-on-one type experiences, or you could sign up on a wait list for that. But I also set up a large number of audio and physical installations where if you followed the clues in the audio and the physical installations, you could move throughout the rest of the festival on a kind of scavenger hunt, as well as designing a bunch of audio pieces that would be played at face painting stations. So people were going and getting face paint done that went along with the audio, and you didn't choose your face paint through like picking a thing. You actually like picked an object, and like the object to find what audio piece you got and what paint. So like there are these little theatrical things, but I feel like music festivals in general, certain ones have a good way of like scaling up this immersive experience. Like if you go to Outside Lands, it has a theme of like being summer camp, and they have like a mascot, and you kind of get people into the vibe. But on a really large scale, Insomniac, which produces a lot of EDM festivals, really focuses on that because they do themed festivals, and they hire staffs of burlesque performers that go throughout the festival and like different type of things, and they actually have like a light storyline to their festival and like a video piece, like and pyrotechnic things that fit, and the video that goes between the acts at different times actually fits into their festival storyline. So they have one that's like Alice in Wonderland themed. They have a festival that is medieval times themed at a Renaissance fairgrounds in Texas. I think that that's a example of scalability, and also goes back to what you were saying about what you felt about live concerts.
Well, that's where I started. My first immersive experience that I ever did was for the Warped Tour. It was awesome. We got hired to go in and create an immersive experience. And again, Warped Tour is in a different city every day. And we did a whole experience for this artist named Emily Autumn. And every morning we'd come out and we'd set up 14 tents, and it was great because if you walked into our section, the concert was done by interaction. And so you might have, if you walked into the right tent and you knew what to say, Emily Autumn would do an entire song with her entire band for just one person. And so you would hear it, but you weren't allowed in. Or if you knew how to unlock her background singers, they would take you on a platform and they would bring you up, and they would do the entire song to 4 people on this platform. And so everyone in Warped Tour would see 4 audience members on a platform, but they'd all hear it. So you could all hear the music, but you'd have to figure out how to get them to do it. And there was one where she did like, she pulled you into a tent and she did a song a cappella in your ear, just sang it to you by herself. And it was awesome because, you know, I've been lucky that I've been able to kind of navigate the film world and immersive. And I've been lucky enough to be a part of the Saw franchise. And it was awesome because, you know, I would get to go to premieres and travel the world, but I never had a connection with the audience. I would see them, I would wave, but there was zero connection. But on the Warped Tour, I would see people crying and, you know, from just getting an a cappella song sung in their ear, and I would actually see an immediate reaction. Now, an example, St. Agatha, we've been doing for 2 years. 2 years. It's taken 2 years to see an audience reaction. Where something like one of these immersive experiences, we can write it, and 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, we're seeing it affect people. And to me, that is a drug that I've become absolutely addicted to. Because as an artist, I want to tell stories that affect people, that reach people quickly. Not tell a story that takes 7 years. Like with Mother's Day, I shot a movie called Mother's Day, and it took 5 years from when we shot it before anyone saw it. That's horrible. Like you do something, it's become outdated by the time it's ever screened by anyone. And that's why, again, I think immersive theater is so exciting.
And it's also similar to just with like regular live theater, just being there in the back of the audience. Like there's something about things being a live experience and doing them with other people there. Even if it's not immersive, I feel like there's something that's special because the people that are there that one night, the audience members, and the actors, like it's a unique set of like atoms that are there that are creating that like one-time thing. So even though I have done like film stuff before and worked on TV shows and things, like I really just have always had a passion for live theater and live experience.
Cool. So I have a ton more questions, but we're running out of time. So let's actually take some questions from the audience. Does anybody have a question for any of us up here? Anyone want to start? Sharon?
Awesome. Well, obviously in the last year, a lot has come up in regards to safety in the immersive experiences. And so what is some of the things that you guys, especially like Blackout, maybe more extreme, how do you feel you can navigate or have been navigating the issues of safety while not taking away from the experience for the participants?
Cool. For those of you that did not hear, the question is about safety and how do we navigate sort of the perils and all the restraints that come along with that without affecting the show and keeping the show up. So let's start with Blackout, actually. Chris?
I would say the thing that is most important, and the further we go into it, we realize that the answer is in the show itself. That is to say, the more physical we are with an individual, the more control we have over what their body is doing and how they're moving through space. So a lot of our hands-on work is actually being done so that we can keep them safe, right? And people afterwards will be like, "It was so fucking crazy because he grabbed me and it did that," you know what I mean? And it's meant to be that, right? But the secret behind a lot of that behavior is actually so that we can stay in control, because the one thing that everybody at this table knows is that when people get scared, they just run into walls. You know what I mean? And like, we are famous for having black plastic walls for that, and it was very much out of necessity, because we're like, well, if you run into a black plastic wall, you won't break your nose. So I think there's all these, I think the short answer to your question for me is that when you can find things that serve the narrative and serve the sort of environment and the fear factor of the whole experience that are actually safety measures, but that you're masking them as something that's sort of environmental, atmospheric, or performative in order to keep you safe. But I definitely think that it's 100% the most important thing, and I say this because some of the early stuff we were doing, like, just to be specific, there was a scene that was like putting your hands around someone's neck and slowly tightening and tightening and tightening. And it was so effective, it was terrifying. People, you could feel their pulse with your hands. But then there was always, and nobody, thank God, got hurt during that scene, but there was a couple of moments through that show, we probably put like 600 people through it, where there was an ow moment, where they were like, ow, you know what I mean? And then all of that tension and that beauty and that fear disappeared in a second. So like the answer, I think that was also really a revelation for Josh and I think, is like, you can flirt with this thing, but you can't, like the second it starts tipping over, the artifice of it, and like that's actually, like that's where the art of the whole thing is in keeping it right on that edge, and the second that you tip over, it's not interesting anymore.
So John, what's your take on that, especially because you have so many stunts and your actors, I think, get probably more physical than maybe some of ours. But what's your take on the safety thing?
We don't care about safety.
Great answer, thank you.
No, there's a lot of, if you haven't been to a show, we incorporate stunts into the story, a lot of wire gags and crawling on ceilings and shit like that. Well, we have a good insurance policy, number one, but no, number two is hiring the right actors. We've all, some of our, the Delusion actors, we've all kind of shared our actors, because we trust them very much. I have a very good core group of people that I trust, inherently trust with the safety of the audience. I think there's only so much we could do, if people, I think you guys have plastic walls, because we have hard walls. We've had people run into walls and like cut themselves. Just, like, it's happened a couple times. So, but we shouldn't talk about our incidents. I think we just train. We just train really well. I mean, I have my stunt coordinator and action coordinator, he does the Avengers and all these big movies. He's a pro. So we bring these people in, we train them properly. We have, the right padding. We have all that kind of stuff. That's the stunt aspect of it. But it really comes down to the actors. They're the ones who are there. They're the ones that we trust the most. And I'm very careful about who I choose. And I could pick up there, and in the audition, I know within the first like 10, 15 seconds if these are people that I can trust, beginning of trust. So.
Cool. What else? Anyone else have a question? Ricky.
Yeah. This is for anyone. I'm curious because you talked about sort of the net reaction. If you get participants and they are really not into it, or they're really too into it, how do you deal with those two extremes?
Oh my God, we can all answer that. Austin, why don't you start?
Yeah, it's interesting because even just last night when we were doing the show, both of our actresses were letting me know between shows, like if they're not into it, it affects the way that the scene happens, which is fascinating to me because I can't be in the room. I can't see what's going on when the show's happening. I'm trying to think, did we ever have anyone who was like too into the show? No, we didn't.
Okay, how about Darren? Because I think some of us have some pretty extreme fans.
Alcohol? Again? No, I mean, we definitely, I think going back, and this kind of ties into safety as well, I think that with what we do, I think the safety issue is not physical safety, but it's mental and emotional safety, because I think that's something that we don't think about. I think it's very easy to look at and say, I'm manhandled, or I'm forced into something very hard, but I think there's a whole other level to that, and that's the emotional impact of these things, because good immersive theater can affect you emotionally and give you feelings that movies and music sometimes don't do, because you're there, as Andy was saying, you're there, you're in the moment, you're breathing next to them, you can smell the perfume they're wearing, and there's an immediate connection. So what happens when there's betrayal in those immediate connections? And I think that when you do that, you create very quick relationships with people. And so to be betrayed by someone, I mean, there's anger, there's resentment, there's rage, there's passion, there's lust. And I think that is, to me, it's one of the things, like for us, the way that we do it, it's all about the illusion that it's not safe. We have cameras everywhere. I mean, there's, on tension, I think we had 82 different camera feeds going in, and we had 3 different people sitting at monitors. We had earpieces in. So we had tells, and if we saw an audience member doing particular things, we would kick them out. With tension, I think there were 4 or 5 different people that we had to kick out, either because they were not obeying rules, or we just saw them and they were just off. And I think for us, it's paramount, safety is paramount, because if you lose that trust with an audience, they're not going to come back. And this is a business, and I wish it was just art, but it's a business, and I have to sell tickets to run the business. So if safety becomes an issue, I'm not going to sell tickets. So it's a fine line, and I think a lot of it's psychology. You have to look at people and watch people and see how they're reacting. I think with us, it's a little difficult because we're doing a lot of meta stuff where actors are the characters are themselves. Like, so you'll meet a character, but she is herself as a name that you can find on Facebook later. So we have a whole other side that we're worrying about. But I mean, I think it's you cannot be distracted. You have to be present and watching at all times for the safety of the participants as well as the actors.
I have this show that involves drinking, and we let people like if they don't want to drink, they don't have to drink. If they want to drink, they can drink. There's an open bar involved, but like there's a drinking game portion, and some people go over the top with their drinking and then start trying to jump over the bar and steal alcohol after the open bar is over. But also like their inhibitions go down because they've drank a lot. And we had issues in one of the shows with one of the audience members.
Was it me? Yeah. Was it me?
No, it wasn't you. Okay. Touching the actors, trying to kiss the actors inappropriately when they were given one-on-one. So we had to, and my actors didn't tell me in the moment. I had to be like, you in the future need to tell me this stuff right away so I can deal with it, because they didn't tell it to me until like days after the performance, and I felt terrible. That's a scary thing to deal with, you know. And so you need to be communicative with everyone to make sure that if like an audience member is taking things too far, that I feel like the actors felt a responsibility to stay in character, but in that situation you need to make sure that you keep each other safe.
Cool. I was going to tell a stupid blackout story, but okay, so just really quickly, Darren was saying something, and I just have to tell the story because it's super awesome and funny. Sometimes you just don't know who you're dealing with and who's coming in, and sometimes it could be really dangerous, and sometimes it can be really innocent, but just really weird. So there was one of our first years, actually it was our first year in LA, Blackout's first year in LA, which I think was 2012. Maybe? There was a scene where you got pushed down this really dark hallway, and then you were in a pitch black room for like, I don't know, let's say 3 minutes. And similar to Attention Experience, we have a ton of security cameras. We're watching. Some of the actors were in night vision goggles, and we kept getting over the headset this one actor, Andrew, saying, "Guys, are you seeing this? This guy is taking off his pants." And we were like, yeah, okay, tell him to put his pants on. Like, be mean. And he's like, "Put on your pants." So he pulled up his pants, and then we left him in the corner for another 30 seconds, and he starts taking his pants off again. and Andrew gets back on, and he's like, "What the fuck do I do?" And we were like, I don't know, give him like one more chance, tell him, you know, put back on your pants, and if he does it again, we'll kick him out. So, and put on your pants, and he puts on his pants, and then we leave him, and there's like multiple people in this room, and so then the actor goes to deal with somebody else, and lo and behold, the guy starts dropping his pants again. So I run in, I pull him out, you know, it's safety, it's a safety issue, and pull him out, and I'm talking to him outside, and he was so genuine, and he wasn't confrontational at all. He kept apologizing, and he kept saying, but someone was whispering, "Take off your pants." You're like, what? And the point is, the guy was hearing something in his head that somebody was standing behind him saying, "Take off your pants." Like, what the fuck? Just in terms of psychological issues, like, how would we ever know what voices are speaking to this guy, or what schizophrenia that is, or multiple person? I don't know. But the bottom line is, it, you know, as Darren was saying, as all of us are saying, it's about monitoring. It's about staying on top of it. We are here to push boundaries, but we have to be responsible on the inside to sort of say, okay, this is going too far off the rails, and now the show has to stop for this person. Next question. Anybody? Yeah.
I'm just curious about it from like a creative standpoint, because like obviously, like, you know, I've done a lot of stuff with films and stuff, but I'm a film student. But I'm curious about like the writing process and the directing process for something immersive, because it's a very different kind of ballpark. You don't have multiple takes, and also you have a lot of variables. I'm curious, how do you do that? Sorry for the awful way that I worded that question.
That's okay. So the question is essentially, how do you direct and create immersive experiences? Which I think we could probably all talk about for a really long time. But seeing that we're wrapping this up, let's just start with Darren. Like, literally 2 or 3 sentences, and not that there's any way we can encapsulate our jobs in 2 and 3 sentences, but like, let's just quickly go down the line and like, how do you approach this shit?
Honestly, I still don't know what I'm doing, and I think that's what this is. It is a new art form still, and I think it's dive in. You know, there's not tiptoeing, and I dove in and just tried to figure it out. And I think that trial by error. Some of the stuff we do works, some of the stuff we do doesn't work. In my opinion, coming from the film world, I approached it like anything else. It's all based on story. So I looked at the story and I figured out the choreography based on the story.
Awesome. Yeah, that's how I kind of approach it too. As I'm directing it, we rehearse extensively, and we have different scenarios that we play out. We'll bring in friends to come in and actually, you know, cause a problem and see how they react to that kind of stuff. But it's a play. Delusion's a play, and I direct it like a play and hire the right actors. We're running out of time, as you said. We can talk a lot.
I usually, if I'm doing a site-specific piece, I start with the location, and then I come up with a story based on location, and then write the parts for the actors and direct from there. And then, like with something like Infinitely Dinner Society, I kind of like deconstruct a concept and go from there, and everything else just comes to me when it comes to me, and it's just following your creative vision itself and going with it.
Yeah, for me, because we had made a film and it took 3 years for it to be completed and done with, and then we did our first show in August, and then we did our second show. We just wrapped it in the end of March, and now we're here. So for me, as a creative experience, it's just so exciting to just tackle something and dive in and be able to create something from start to finish in such a fast amount of time. And just, yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting because there's so many rules in the film and like screenwriting, and this has been such a freeing experience to just sort of be like, anything's possible. So whatever we want to do, let's just like try it out.
I would say that similar to that, for us, at least on my side of it, one of the really big differences between looking at more traditional narratives and this is embracing the what the fuck moment, because I think that there's always that moment where you're like, well, the next scene in the film is going to be the catharsis, right? You know what I mean? And so you can, in this art form, there's a lot of times where you can make complete hard left turns that are really going to discombobulate people, and I think that's going to make them more susceptible to fear. So I think being able to embrace that and being really honest about that, like, is that enough of a throwing them off balance to constantly keep them that way? Because, and I don't think that other art forms have that kind of permission.
I think for me, it's about a feeling, it's about an atmosphere. As some of you may or may not know, with Blackout, story is generally not high on the list. I mean, it sort of is internally, but it's not really ever something that we want our audience to go through. The story that we want, it's more about the story that you create. And so I think on my end, it's probably more about an atmosphere or a feeling that as I'm laying in the bath and I have it and I'm like, oh shit, you know what? If I were in this kind of environment, I think I might feel this way. Let's try it. And then as everybody was saying, you just gotta try it. Like, you just have to do it. There's only so much concept planning you can do with this kind of work before you just jump into the fray and see what happens. And to sort of cap it off, I'm gonna say again what Darren says, and I'm sure all of us will agree, which is, I have no fucking idea. And I'm sure most of us do, and a lot of how this entire thing is starting and growing is because we don't know, but we try. And I think that's one of the most important lessons, like, for anyone who's attempting to start this or do this, you gotta just do it. Like, you stop talking to your friends about it, get a space, get a parking lot, get an RV, get a hotel room, get a street corner, like, get a whatever, and just do it, see what happens. And you would be surprised at how many people flock to that artistic expression just because of the sheer confidence that you as an artist have stepped up and said, you know what, I'm gonna try something. So hopefully that's inspiring in some way. We are officially pretty much done here, so thank you guys all for coming to see us. Thank you guys for chatting, and good luck to all of us for the rest of our performances. Hope you guys have an awesome festival. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.